story about Elijah, and Elmer touched on this whenever he had a word for us. So we are going to read about Elijah. Do you guys remember who Elijah was? Does anyone remember who Elijah was? An Old Testament prophet. So one day Ahab was the king, and he was sitting in his chair, and he was much surprised to see a strange-looking man dressed in camel. He wore a camel coat, came up to him, and he wanted to give a king the message, God's message. But before the king had time to ask the man what he wanted, Elijah said, "As the Lord God of Israel lives, there shall not be dew or rain throughout the land until I announce it." And then Elijah turned and walked away as suddenly as he had come. The king didn't think much of it. He was the king, right? Who is this hairy man going to tell me if it's going to rain or not? The king didn't think much of it. But then the days, the months, the years started to go by, and there was no dew or rain or nothing. And the animals started to starve. There was a famine. So this king was looking for Elijah to ask him, what's going on. So now we fast forward into a couple chapters in the Bible, and God wanted him to go back and speak to the king. 3 years had passed. There's some stories in between where Elijah went down to the brook, the ravens fed him, but 3 years had passed, so Elijah went back to the king to talk to him after 3 years. So the time is up, and he came to the king and he said, "Are you the man who has been causing all this trouble?" Meaning, look, everyone's starving, the ground is bare. And Elijah answered and said, "No, I'm not the man who's troubled your country. You and your family are the guilty ones, for you have forsaken the Lord God and disobeyed his commandments." So that's why I was teaching you children the 10 commandments and the rules that God has in the Bible. Because if you don't, they're there to protect us, and if you don't follow them, you can get hurt. Just like a traffic light. If there's a four-way stop and you don't obey the stop sign and you just buzz through it, one of these days you're going to get hurt. You got to obey the laws. So what the big thing that the king was doing, that he was worshiping an idol we call Baal. And he was worshiping this false god, okay? So here's what Elijah said. He didn't want the king to give him orders. He gave the king orders. He said, let's see. He told the king what has caused all the trouble. And now there was a crowd of curious people that gathered at Mount Carmel, for they had saw Elijah for the first time in 3 years. So let's see. So all these people gathered at Mount Carmel to see this guy Elijah, because they had all their life and their family and their livestock, where there was a great famine. You'd have to have rain for things to grow. So Elijah, let's see, I gotta just keep reading. So Elijah said, "How long are you going to serve first one God, then another? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is the Lord, then follow him." So he was saying, who do you people think is the one true God with all the power? Well, the people did not ask the people to choose right then. He wanted to prove to them who was the one true God. Okay? So I have an object lesson to go along with this today. I stretched in my mind trying to figure out. And so what I brought 2 battery drills. Okay? One has power and the other doesn't. You kids have no clue which one has power and which doesn't. The people, unless you have history with these drills, I've been working with these drills, I know which one died and which one is still good. But what he wanted to show them is which one has the power to do the things that are really true. So I'm going to have you, once we're done with this lesson, I just wanted to throw that in there. I have 2 screws to pull in this board. So half of you kids are going to have to stand on one side with one drill, and the other half and we'll see which drill has the most power to do, because you can't tell the difference right now. Both batteries look exactly the same. And to these people, they were told that Baal is God, and they couldn't see the other God, or they were ignorant to it. If they would have been paying attention and seeing, working like I have, paying attention to what drills what, they'd know which one has power. But they forgot. They got in a hurry, or they did their own work. So Elijah said, I want to show you something. So he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build an offering. Now, once you have your offering made, you pray to Baal and see if he'll burn it up, and I'll pray to my God and see who will burn it up. So they were all excited. They said, so he said, well, because there's so many of you and it's only one of me, why don't you guys go first? So they started dancing around. Well, what do you guys think happened? Nothing, right? Because he doesn't have any power. He's a fake. He's dead. He's not alive. So in a short time, the heathens had their sacrifice ready, and they jumped up and down. Nothing happened. Elijah knew their God could not send fire from heaven. So Elijah said, hey, maybe you guys have to shout louder. Maybe Baal's sleeping. So they shouted louder. They cut themselves. Nothing would get Baal's attention because his battery's dead. He's not alive. So now it was Elijah's turn. They jumped and hollered and hooped till sunset, and Elijah didn't have much time. He said, okay, my turn. So he said, why don't you guys go get 4 big pitchers of water and pour it on the altar. Now remember, water and fire don't mix, right? What happens when you pour water on fire? It goes out. But he had 4 big pails, and he built a trough around it, and the trough even filled up with water. He said, that's not enough. Go get 4 more bucketfuls and dump it on there. They dumped 4 more on. There was a bigger puddle. He said, it's still not enough. One more time, get another. Let's put 12 pails of water on this altar. They put 12 pails, and I'm sure they started snickering, saying, yeah, let's see what happens. But Elijah bowed his head, and he said, let's see, it's time for evening. So he said, hear me, O Lord, hear me, that these people may know that you are God, and they return to worship you. And at once, as soon as he said that, fire came down from heaven and burned up the whole sacrifice, and took all the water away, burned up everything. Now the people said, how amazed the people were, and they said they had never seen anything like this before. They were sure that Elijah's God was the one true God, and they fell on their faces and said, the Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God. So they knew that Baal had no power, no nothing. So, here's your lesson. Someone has to learn the hard way. No, one of these has no power. Who wants to pick? Who has ever ran a drill before? Raise your hand if you ran a drill before. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody else? Okay. Why don't you 4 pick? Which drill? 2 and 2. 2 of you stand on one side, 2 of you stand on the other. There's 4 screws. You come pick this one. You come pick this one. Whatever 2 kids. All right, today you're going to show us which one has power. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, let Christopher. What's going on with Baal there? Maybe you have to do it by hand, or maybe you have to shout or kick it. All right, good job. So this is a tool that you want to keep in your belt. and go to work with. This one will do nothing for you, right? All right, so one more quick lesson. I think we have time. So now God has power. He still has power today. He wanted to show these children that he has a lot of power. So now we have one more story about a man named Joshua. Who remembers Joshua in the Bible? He was the leader after Moses, and they went into the land of Canaan where there were a lot of wars and stuff. So in this story, we'll back up to God has a lot of power, and he made the creation, right? So he has commandment over the weather, the sun, the moon, all those things. So in this one, news came to the king of Jerusalem that that Joshua had taken Ai and destroyed Jericho and even the great royal city of Gibeon, and with her many warriors had made peace with the Israelites. But because the king of Jerusalem was afraid, he sent word to his neighbors, said, "Come and help me make war against the people of Gideon, because they have made peace with the Israelites." So a lot of the soldiers came and gathered because they wanted to make war. 5 kings came and gathered their armies, and they marched around the hills of Gibeon, and they camped around the great city and made war about it. Were ready to make war. So the Lord told Joshua, "Do not be afraid, for I will be with you. Your enemies will not win." So here was Joshua's little army, and here was the other army, and they gathered down there in this valley. They had 5 kings with lots more people. Here it looks like the same amount of people, but I believe these people had a lot more, or Joshua wouldn't have been afraid, because he was a mighty warrior, but must be with these 5 kings and all their people, he was scared. But the Lord had told him, "Do not be afraid." So, because Joshua had a history with the Lord, he knew that if he'd obey God, he could win. So here's the Lord told him to attack the Israelites at night in a surprise thing, and he did. So he came up at night, the enemy turned and began to run up into the hills, and there was a hailstorm that night, and more men were killed in the hailstorm than in the battle. Think about that. God, the creator of the universe, said, "Send hail down," and these men running up into the mountain killed more of them. It's interesting to note that it only killed them and not the Israelites. So Joshua seen that God was helping them win this battle. The 5 kings ran into a cave. He closed the door, and then because of the kings were captive, all these people started to run into the hills, and the sun and the moon, it started to get dark. So now Joshua said, if all these people run into the hills and get back together after this hailstorm, there's still too many of them. So he commanded the sun and the moon to stand still. While these people were scared and running, he told the sun and the moon to stand still, and God allowed them to stand still so there would be more time while these people were scared and flustered to kill all of them, so they couldn't reunite and come back and fight Joshua. So here we see that God is all-powerful. There were more of them. He was weaker. God was still on his side. So I need 2 of the most powerful boys up here. Strongest boys. You don't have to wrestle or nothing to prove that you're the strongest. Probably Micah and Samuel here at the end. I need 2 of you. You're going to be my strong men. You stand on each side. Okay, now I need a weak girl, so to speak. You guys are the weaker vessel, right? Betty, why don't you come up here in the middle? You hold that. Now you put your foot on the inside. You put your foot on the inside, hold that. Betty, turn around, and you try and pull those sticks in together. Pull those sticks away from the boys. Oh, she might be stronger. So hold up top, so it don't kick out. Let her hold up top. Pull with everything you've got. All right, so hold on. She's a strong, weaker vessel. So hold on, Betty. Hold on. So my point is, you got some of them, but we're going to send hailstorm to really scare these boys, okay? So what God did, he helped. So this would be God's help. So here we go. You hold that one. Put that about in the middle of the stick like that. Micah, bring it together a little bit closer. So Betty, you come out here to me, because you don't want to be involved in this battle. You just need God on your side. There's no use to all this struggle, these boys. All right, now you take this rope. You have God on your side, and you step down. Now, pull the rope. Just pull it. Look how easy Betty is. Like, it don't even take much. Because she has God's power. All right, good job. So that's my lesson for today. If you guys have God on your side, let God work for you. Okay? You kids are dismissed.